Gordon, Russia claims a recent airstrike wiped out the leader of the Islamic State Caliphate, but Russia's foreign minister cautions, even if it's true, it does not mean the end of ISIS. As Shelley and Aaron reports, we've heard rumors before about the ISIS leader's death.
The Russian Defense Ministry believes ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was killed in a Russian strike in late May, along with other senior group commanders. In a statement, Russia claims the airstrike was carried out during a meeting of ISIS leaders outside the group's de facto capital of Raqqa in Syria. The report of al-Baghdadi's possible death comes as ISIS suffers major setbacks. U.S. and coalition forces have been ramping up the pressure in their battle against ISIS in Syria. Secretary of Defense James Mattis told CBS News that his order from President Trump is to eliminate the Islamic terror group once and for all.
We have already shifted from attrition tactics where we shove them from one position to another in Iraq and Syria to annihilation tactics where we surround them.
Russia's defense ministry says their air raid came as ISIS leaders were plotting their escape from Raqqa as the pressure was mounting. They say the strike killed about 30 mid-level ISIS leaders and about 300 fighters. Meanwhile, a spokesman for the U.S.-led anti-Islamic State coalition says he cannot confirm reports that al-Baghdadi has been killed. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
President Trump is looking to make good on his campaign promise when it comes to the communist island nation of Cuba. While visiting Miami today, he's announcing changes to the deal President Obama made with Cuba. President Trump's goal is to stop cash from flowing to the Cuban military and security services. The new policy would keep diplomatic relations and allow U.S. airlines and cruise ships to continue servicing the island. The United Methodist Church is raising some eyebrows after appointing its first non-binary transgender deacon. Reverend M. Barclay came out as lesbian while studying theology and training to become a Methodist minister, then later became transgender. Those years were filled with uncertainty and a crisis of belief. Barclay now does not identify with either gender and does not like the pronouns he and she. Instead, Barclay prefers to be referred to as they. This weekend, dads will open cards, gifts, and maybe even be treated to dinner for Father's Day. John Jessup introduces us to one son who's honoring his father 365 days a year.
Jonathan Hayden wears many hats: teacher, son, and now caregiver.
These are the projects that need to be taken care of. It is hard to see a man, especially a man of his stature, what he's done, to see him like this.
Jonathan grew up in this Northeast Washington, D.C. neighborhood until a few years ago when he bought his own home. He had no idea a few years later he'd be back to take care of his aging mom and dad who has dementia.
I tend to think that he's maybe had signs of it for a long time. He's never been much on remembering things.
Jonathan is also part of a trend, as almost 45% of today's caregivers in America are men. 20 years ago, it was half that.
Let me tell you about the toughest guy on earth. He does the work of 2 jobs.
Jonathan admits it's a challenge, not only dealing with his father's memory loss, but also his sometimes combative personality.
My father has said some things that have hurt me to the core. Hurt me to the core, left me out of there crying.
Although it helps him learn about patience and forgiveness.
But we have to be patient with the person and recognize that they cannot control what it is that they're doing, and that is not their fault.
He credits his faith, friends, and the sense of community from a support group for caregivers, something a lot of men don't have.
Men tend to kind of suck it up, if you will, and take it in stride, not really kind of looking for the help that they need. That poses some potential health challenges.
So this looks like this may be you. Is that you?
That is me.
And who's that lovely lady next to you?
That's Jackie.
Jonathan's father says he's not perfect, but he's grateful for his son willing to step up and offer a helping hand.
Very helpful. He makes a tremendous difference,
Though it's an unexpected role, it's one he says he proudly accepts.
And there's nothing feminine or less masculine about being a caretaker, being a nurse, whatever you want to call it. You have to, because they're your parents.
John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Honoring thy father and mother, that thy days may be long on this earth. Gordon, happy Father's Day to you.
And happy Father's Day to you, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I hope you get a wonderful day of rest. Terry?
Well, coming up, she's America's new UN ambassador, and she's standing up for human rights around the world.
Whether it's religious persecution, we're starting to see all of those things, and it's just hard. But at the end of the day, I need to let God do. And so that's the way I look at it.
Stay tuned for our exclusive interview with Nikki Haley when we come back.
When I was first diagnosed, I had fear.
He said they found a mass on my lung. They think it's lung cancer.
I've got my wife and 2 young children. I want to be here for a long time for my family. I didn't know where to turn. Cancer Treatment Centers of America, they gave us options. They recommended chemotherapy first and then to follow up with radiation.
Our integrative model is very important, so all of my patients have access to a dietitian, a naturopathic provider, and pastoral care. We're actually going to integrate all of those services together to help patients as a team.
If you or someone you love is fighting cancer, go to cancercenter.com/faith, medicine and technology.
He's been doing amazingly well. He has responded to therapy.
The warm embrace of the Spirit.
It's almost like having a church family at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. It's pretty amazing.
Call or go to cancercenter.com/faith. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits. Appointments available now.
Monday, she was a witch known as the Black Widow.
Then she kills him, and that's exactly what I was doing.
Until she became the prey.
And I can hear my bones cracking.
Then,
there's so much sacrifice and so much pain.
5-time Olympic medalist Sonia Richards-Ross shares what makes her resilient.
This doesn't buy you a ticket to an easy life.
On Monday's 700 Club. Well, President Trump has a reputation for being tough and bold, so it's no surprise he chose Nikki Haley as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. As CBN's David Brody reports, the former governor has been shaking up the UN while standing firmly for Israel.
Don't let the Southern accent fool you.
Good morning.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley means business in her new role at the United Nations.
For those that don't have our back, we're taking names.
As U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Haley has begun to shake things up at this international body, which has received plenty of criticism from its host country. That's where we began our one-on-one conversation in New York.
Well, I thought I needed to make how this community was going to see the United States. I thought that it was my job to go and start positioning that. And it was that the United States is leading again, and that they were going to see true leadership. But more importantly, they were going to know what the U.S. was for, what the U.S. was against, and there would be no gray area.
Israel is right at the top of that list.
The United States is determined to stand up to the UN's anti-Israel bias.
Long gone are the days when President Obama's UN ambassador abstained from a vote that labeled Israel's settlements a flagrant violation under international law.
It's been abusive. Like, it really has. I was floored when I got here at how biased they were against Israel. On the smallest things to the biggest things. It was almost like the UN community just bullied Israel.
Her action led to a hero's welcome in Israel this month.
Thank you for all your help in standing up for Israel, standing up for the truth, which is standing up for America.
Haley feels defending Israel is a moral obligation to do what's right. She recalls sitting through meetings where country after country went after the Jewish state.
I got mad. It was just unacceptable. And so what I did was I just called them out. And I, just said, I can't believe in times where we've got issues with North Korea and Syria and we're dealing with Russia and China, you're going to sit there and spend every single month, like you have for the last 10 years, on an Israel bashing session. It just blows my mind.
Haley's hit list is long. The U.S. is considering pulling out of the UN's questionable Human Rights Council, considering that countries involved in it also commit abuses.
The Venezuelan people have been robbed of their human rights. And yet, not once has the Human Rights Council seen fit to condemn Venezuela.
And Russia doesn't get a pass, especially over its relationship with the Syrian government.
If Russia has the influence in Syria that it claims to have, we need to see them use it. We need to see them put an end to these horrific acts. How many more children have to die before Russia cares?
So how does Haley think the U.S. should deal with Russia?
I think it depends on the issue. So I think that what you should assume is that we should always look out for the United States first and do everything we can to secure and protect American citizens. Having said that, Russia has not been very friendly with us on certain things. We've disagreed on Syria. We've disagreed on Ukraine. We've disagreed on certain other resolutions and issues. But we do agree on ISIS, and we do agree on how we're going to counter ISIS.
Countering North Korea is another challenge, possibly the biggest.
We have every right to be concerned about North Korea. This is not small potatoes when it comes to what we have to deal with. You've got a leader who is unbelievably paranoid about being overthrown, about being assassinated, about, trying to move into his country. And the truth is the U.S. is not pushing for regime change. We're not pushing for war. That's not what we want. And so we're telling them, don't give us a reason to have to do that.
All of this requires faith, and not one based on actions of others.
Ever since I was little, I know I always wanted to have a deep, strong faith. And I always felt like I had a strong relationship to God and, could talk to God during the day and all of those things that that bring you peace.
Raised in the Sikh faith of her Indian-American family, Haley says as an adult she became a Christian as the teachings of Jesus spoke to her. That faith surely got tested as governor after multiple tragedies in South Carolina.
For me, it was hard realizing I couldn't protect everyone. And when that sadness and that trauma kicks in, you have to strengthen your faith. You have to. And so I think that really forced me to have to just say, all right, God, you've got to take this. I can't do it.
And she realizes she has to let Jesus take the wheel here at the UN, too.
I feel like now that we're in New York, you see a lot more pain. You see, whether it's religious persecution, whether you see chemical weapons usage, whether you see crematoriums and things like that. We're starting to see all of those things. And it's just hard. And you just have to go back to your faith, because at the end of the day, the way I look at it is I have to be the strongest I can be. I have to do it with passion. I have to do it with conviction. I have to stay true to myself. But at the end of the day, I need to let God do. And so that's the way I look at it.
She's leaving it all in God's hands. And clearly, God is using Nikki Haley for such a time as this. David Brody, CBN News, New York.
What a wonderful breath of fresh air into the UN and also into our foreign policy to say, here's where we stand, and there's no gray areas. You're going to know exactly where we stand, why we stand for it, and let's uphold the principles here. And let's call people into account. What a wonderful thing. And so applause is needed. This is incredible.
What common sense in so many decisions that she makes, but what strength with which she makes them. That really makes a statement, I think.
Well, it's sort of reasserting what I think has always been a hallmark of America, that we hold ourselves and the world to a moral standard. Mm-hmm. That has been critiqued through the years, and you get into, I think, very murky areas when you walk away from that, as we're here as a force of good. And if you depart from that and start getting into arrangements where what's our interest, what's going on, it doesn't make sense, and it's confusing to everyone. What's the motivation here? And so when you have the motivation, we want to establish righteousness, and we need to understand righteousness exalts a nation.
Mm-hmm. Well, up next, a pastor's son breaks bad and starts running meth labs.
There was a feeling of death all around me all the time, whether I was high or not.
Watch what happens when his own father had to throw him in jail. That's next.
Hello, neighbor. Pat Boone here. You know, I remember a time when cashing a check at the bank to go on a vacation or buy a new car was a pleasure. Not today. Now, banks interrogate you about why you want your money, and in some cases, don't have enough cash on hand to give back your own deposits. And if you carry too much cash with you, like a Christian band did after a recent concert, it could be confiscated if an officer deems it suspicious. This is all part of a secret war on cash, taking away your financial freedoms. Why don't you call the number on the screen for a copy of The Secret War? I think you'll be amazed to see what the government and the media are hiding from you. Don't become a casualty of this secret war. It's your money. You need to protect it. Call now.
There were so many issues in my bag.
Pretty much had shut me down. I couldn't even stand up straight.
After going to Laser Spine Institute, I can't tell you how much happier I am.
After years of living with chronic back pain, I finally found the answer.
Call Laser Spine Institute, the leader in minimally invasive spine surgery, to learn how you can get lasting relief from chronic neck and back pain, all with a less than 1-inch incision. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with spinal stenosis, bulging or herniated disc, sciatica, or other chronic spine conditions, call today for your no-cost MRI review.
After surgery, I was so surprised that I could walk the next day and walk without pain. It was amazing.
If you've been told you might need neck or back surgery, call 1-844-520-BACK now for your no-cost MRI review.
Calling Laser Spine Institute was the best decision I've ever made.
I can lift up my 3-year-old, run and play, and they help me get my life back.
Laser Spine Institute, a less than 1-inch incision, a lifetime of standing tall.
Ron Perryman was a wanted man. For 30 years, he was hooked on meth and sold it as his full-time job.